Hey everybody, and welcome back to Everything Created. Today we are talking about light. So if you didn't know already, this is part 3 of a plant care guide, and I'm doing a blog on these topics as well, so part 3 will be on my blog. My website can take you to the blog, and that'll be in the description of this video if you'd rather read. If you'd rather not read, please go ahead and subscribe and we'll jump right in. If you have been trying to keep houseplants alive and you feel like you are already watering them correctly, you feel like you already have a good soil mix, and they're still dying, chances are it could be your light. I'm going to go over a couple of symptoms of light problems, if you will, with your plants. If you have really pale spots or crispy edges, that could be a sign that you have way too much light. If you have direct sunlight beaming on them for hours and hours and hours at a time, and it's a plant that can't typically handle that much light, you will notice big pale spots on it, crispy leaves, and eventually the plant would die. However, if you have a plant that is not getting enough light, typically the leaves will get smaller, they'll grow further apart, making the plant what they call leggy, so there will be long stretches between leaves, and eventually your plant will get unsteady and fall over because it will be reaching towards a light source trying to get to where it has enough light. So I don't need this video to be very long. My goal here today is just to help you understand all the kind of confusing terms when people say bright direct light, bright indirect light, medium light, and low light. They also might mention grow lights. And so for a lot of people, they have a single plant they got from a funeral, or they got a single plant from a friend, or they liked one particular one at Walmart and that's the only one they want. And they just want to know where to put it. So I'm going to try to simplify those terms and make it really easy to understand. I might take the camera around and try to show you some different spots. As you can see behind me here, I do use grow lights in this room. I'm on the north side of my house, and there's only one window in this room, right over there. And this room does not get very much natural light, but I have most of my plants in this room because I supplement with grow lights. For my subscribers who are not in the northern hemisphere of the planet Earth, I'm going to say this now, a lot of my subscribers are in other countries. So if you live below the equator, everything I say about east windows, west windows, north windows, south windows, it's all backwards. So I'm going to start with talking about when people say this plant needs an east window, this plant needs a west window, this plant needs a south window or north window. And I'll explain what each of those windows does and what they're for. A lot of houseplants grow in forest floors or in areas partially shaded by trees. So they will get beams of sunlight occasionally. So don't be afraid of letting the sun touch your houseplants. That's something that a lot of people kind of scare you away from. The sun can touch them a little bit and they'll be fine. The difference is sun blasting them all day long is not good for most houseplants. There are some that need it, like the bird of paradise or the fiddle-leaf figs. Most trees, really. Any kind of houseplant tree will do well with as much sun as you can give it inside. So that brings me to say this. The most light you can give a plant in your home is what they call bright direct. That's going to be about 6 hours or so of sunlight. If you're in the northern hemisphere, your south-facing windows will have actual direct sunlight coming in at least for a certain number of hours of the day. It doesn't have to be 6, but as long as it's close to that, that will do fine for most plants that need that bright direct light. And as for your east and west windows, I personally consider those more like a bright indirect light. So what they call bright indirect is basically sunlight comes in your home, it's bouncing off of other surfaces, perhaps it's a little bit filtered by a sheer curtain or something. And the light in that area is still very bright, but it's not actual direct rays of sunlight coming onto your plant leaves. So while east and west windows are very similar, east gets morning sun, west gets evening sun. Typically in a west-facing window, the sun in the evenings is going to be a little bit hotter somehow. So you might, if you have a more sensitive plant to light, you might want to move it over to an east window instead. Ultimately, you can always just Google the specific plant that you're looking for, and you should get an idea of where it can go in your home. And for those of you who live right along the equator of the globe, unfortunately, your south windows are no better than your north windows, and the only sunlight you're going to get in your home is from east and west. And typically, north-facing windows are considered medium light, so anywhere within a couple feet of a north-facing window is going to be about the lowest light that you can safely provide for most plants. There are some that can handle it low. But for the most part, most plants need, at the very least, to be near a north-facing window, unless you're supplementing with grow lights. And as for grow lights, a lot of people are a lot pickier than I am on grow lights. I like to get full spectrum LED, high color temperature, all this lights for my plants, but honestly, regular LEDs will work just fine. I don't really recommend incandescent bulbs. They don't seem to work very well, and there is a reason for why they don't work very well, but I can't remember what that reason is right now. But basically, if you're reading on the box for whatever kind of light you want, you don't have to buy plant grow lights specifically. I've even used like under cabinet LED lighting, like the bars that are $10 or $15 or along those lines, something like that at Walmart. They don't work very well at a distance because the light is very diffused. But if you do buy a plant grow light or even an under cabinet light, I would check the box. Typically, lights will say what their color temperature is, and that'll be marked with a K, just like how 100 degrees Fahrenheit is 100 degrees F. The color temperature is marked, 5,000 K, 6,000 K, 7,000 K, and it stands for Kelvin. So you can look up the color temperature of the light you're using. Typically, 5,000 is pretty much bare minimum for plant growth if you are growing your plants only with that light. However, if you have, let's say you have a north window that's a little ways off and you're just kind of supplementing with an LED light, maybe something with a color temperature of 5,000 or less would be good enough. But typically you want to get higher than that. Your plants will grow better if they have more light, basically. So I would just keep that in mind. So I do have two different kinds behind me here, and I've thrown away the boxes, so I don't know what they are. I think the full spectrum ones typically are this weird purplish color. If you don't like that color, these work just fine too. The plants on this side are doing just as good as the plants on this side, so I don't really worry much about it. Just pick whatever light works for you. If your plants are not doing well, then maybe consider upgrading, but if they're doing fine, then just roll on. So I'm going to show you some examples of these different light locations, so that way you can kind of get an idea of what these things might look like in your space. However, if you don't want to try to eyeball it and figure out what everything is, there are light meter apps that can read, but you point your camera around the room and it will tell you the light level of the room. I think the apps are called like Lux meters, LUX meters. I've never actually used one. I don't really know anything about it, but I've heard that people can do that. So that might be worth looking into if you're not very familiar with the different light levels. But right now I'm going to go ahead and show you around. So this window is on the south side of my house, and I regret that I'm filming this in the evening, so I really can't show you very well what this looks like. But throughout the morning time, the sun shines in about this far, and it stays in kind of a patch here throughout the day as the sun travels. It'll be down a little bit and forward, sort of, and so it shines in at an angle. And then as it moves across the sky, the light comes in across these plants here. This is considered bright direct light. This is an old leaf, that's why it's brown. It's not getting too much light, I promise. But this is an avocado tree. This is a Alocasia cuculata. This is a fuchsia plant. So all these things like as much sunlight as you could possibly give them, so they've done really well here. And surprisingly, the fuchsia even bloomed indoors the other day, so I was really impressed with that. So this is an example of bright direct light, although it's not shining in here right now. I promise this window is very bright. So this window faces east, and ignore all the baby stuff. This is my daughter's room, but I don't actually have any plants in here. But this window, this right here, I left the lights off so you could see this better. See the carpet in the shadows? It's like this dark gray color. This whole area, you can see natural light coming in. I would call all this medium light. There's plenty of natural light coming in, but it's not actual beams of sunlight being filtered off of anything. I actually had a hard time finding low light spots because my house is really bright. But this area here, I would call this about medium light. When you get over here, you see how dark that corner is? If you have a dark corner like this without any windows around, that is an example of a low light location. So let's say I wanted to put a plant up here. See how dark and shadowy that looks? Very few plants would survive that. I mean, your snake plants, cast iron plants, there's a few that would survive it, but they wouldn't be doing their best. I would not recommend an area like this, but you could use that plug there to run a lamp up here and have some kind of LED light shining down on your plant, and then you could put basically whatever you wanted right there. This philodendron Florida green is doing really well in this spot. This is a north-facing window, and it is, as you can see, there's light reflecting off those leaves. There's quite a bit of bright indirect light coming in, even though, again, there's no actual rays of sunlight shining in. This plant is still thriving. So that's it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know this video was short, but it's meant to be short. It's meant to be simple. I want this to be really easy to understand, so that way anyone who doesn't really care about plants all that much can keep their 1 or 2 plants alive easier. If you want more detail and you want to go in depth with me on it, read my blog post. I will go much deeper on that. I figure if you are reading a blog post about plants, you're probably someone who wants to know a lot more about them. So please feel free to read that. If you enjoyed this video, let me know by liking and leave a comment down below. What was your hardest plant lighting challenge to figure out? Thanks for watching. Stay green.